Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our school. My name is J. Harrison Coleman. I'm the principal of Malcolm X Elementary School. Head of School WRIGHT and I are delighted to host you today to share the results of the district's 2013 NAEP results. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you, especially Mayor Gray, Secretary Duncan, and other district officials who are in the room today. I also want to welcome students from both Malcolm X Elementary School and Achievement Prep. We applaud you for your hard work. Before this event started, we had the opportunity to show Mayor Gray and Secretary Duncan our school. In this building and schools across the city, there are great things happening for our students. We certainly have a long way to go, but we should take a moment to acknowledge our progress and to celebrate our students and educators for how far we have come. Let's all keep up the good work and keep our eyes on the bright future of all our young people. With that, I'd like to introduce the head of Achievement Prep, Public Charter School, Ms. Chantelle Wright.
Thank you, Principal Harrison Coleman, and thank you for being here today. Mr. Mayor and Secretary Duncan, we are proud that you chose our school, an innovative co-location of a neighborhood and public charter school, to release the NAEP results today. As Principal Harrison Coleman said, there are amazing things happening in the district, as evidenced by our coming together and by the news we are about to hear from Secretary Duncan. I want to applaud educators and students throughout the city for their hard work and for the progress that they've made. It's true, we still have a lot of work to do, but if we continue on the path we have chartered, we will continue to see growth for all of our students in the years to come. And now, it's my honor to introduce the Mayor of the District of Columbia, the Honorable Vincent C. Gray.
Well, thank you very much to Principal Harrison Coleman, to the head of school who you just heard from, Ms. Wright. I want to thank both of you for welcoming us to what I think is a really great, wonderful announcement. I'm glad to be joined, of course, by the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, who really has spent a good bit of time with us. He has proven, if you don't mind me saying so, Mr. Secretary, proven to be a really good friend of the District of Columbia. Having run the schools of Chicago, he knows what it means to, how complex it is to run a big city school system, and has brought those values here to Washington, the federal side, and we've been the recipient of your efforts on our behalf. So thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us today. Also, I'm glad to be joined by our acting state superintendent, Jesús Aguirre, our deputy mayor for education, Abigail Smith, our chancellor of the DC Public Schools, Chancellor Henderson, and of course the executive director of the Public Charter School Board, Scott Pearson, Councilmember David Catania, who has joined us today as well, who has oversight of education for the Council of the District of Columbia, and all the school staff who joined us. And we have some fifth graders here today. Who's a fifth grader here today? Oh, what a coincidence. Well, we're glad to have you all here, and we'll hear a little bit more about you all as as the time wears on. We're really excited to be here today to announce the results of our 2013 NAEP test, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Frankly, this is good news. It's a real pleasure to be able to announce the educational achievements of our city, the District of Columbia. Maybe one day we'll be a state, but right now we are a city. We're oftentimes treated like a state when it comes to these kinds of comparisons. I'm delighted to be here with our educational leaders, especially this school, which is co-located. That is our DCPS school, Malcolm X, and of course Achievement Prep Academy, both of which is a charter school, both of which are co-located, which is yet another unique effort to try to bring together the best of education so that we can learn from each other and be able to exercise those lessons that we are learning. This past summer, I was delighted to be able to highlight the partnership between Achievement Prep Academy and Malcolm X as what I think, and many think, is a great model, where two schools are fully integrated under one roof. We just had a conversation earlier about how we may be integrated geographically, but we have continuing challenges to make sure we work together from an instructional point of view. It's essentially taking the strength of a neighborhood school and combining it with the innovations that we see in our charter schools across the city. We now have, 60-plus charter schools on more than 100 campuses, and we have almost half of our students now being served in charter schools and the other half being served in our D.C. Public schools. So the fifth graders that are here with us today actually took the fourth grade NAEP math and reading test last year and are part of, and I'm very proud of them, they are part of the first group of pre-K participants since the passage in 2008, 2009 of the Pre-K Enhancement and Expansion Act, which was a bill that I was really delighted to be a part of, to introduce, to work with my then colleagues on the Council of the District of Columbia to convince them that if we got our children in school early enough, we really could make a material difference in their outcomes. And I think we're beginning to see it now with last year's fourth graders. You'll, I think, notice that with the test scores that we have, and now the fifth graders. I've said it to anybody that will listen. We now have, whereas the typical state has 30 to 40% of their 4-year-olds in school, we now have 92% of our 4-year-olds who actually are enrolled in school. And whereas when you look at the other states, they may have 10 to 15% of their 3-year-olds enrolled in school, we now have 70%. 7 out of every 10 3-year-olds are enrolled in school. Now, I know that some of you joined us earlier this year at Kelly Miller Middle School. And we're proud that the principal of Kelly Miller was the principal of the year, right, Chancellor? Principal Zaki, who was honored the other night at the Kennedy Center at the standing ovation. To look at progress that we had made up to that point. Today, I am ecstatic, and I'll probably say this to anybody that will listen in the Western Hemisphere, but I am ecstatic to share that we are now first in the nation for the most growth achieved in both reading and math for 4th and 8th grade NAEP tests. And I hope you join with us in that excitement, Mr. Secretary. Of course, you'll be coming up to speak shortly, but we want you to be as excited as we are about the success that our students are achieving, which we think, certainly is owed to the philanthropic community, the business community, our nonprofit organizations, our families, our students, our teachers, the legislators, policymakers in the District of Columbia, everybody that's joined hands to recognize that this is the most important investment that we will ever make in the city, because, not to be trite, but it is the future of our city. The NAEP tests are administered by the U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics and is the largest nationally representative continuing and comparative assessment of student achievement in reading and math across the entire nation. And out of all the states, a state, doesn't it sound good? It feels good to be a state, doesn't it? Out of all the states, the District of Columbia outpaced the nation on several fronts and showed strong, steady growth across both subjects in the 4th and 8th grade NAEP tests. Not only did our 4th and 8th graders achieve significant increases in reading and math tests, but our math achievement gap has shown marked improvements with a near 50% reduction over now a period of years. That is an incredible growth pattern, something that we all ought to be proud of, and especially our students and our families and our teachers should be proud of that progress. The NAEP results also reflected that the District of Columbia has increased the percentage of at or above proficient students in math and reading, which again is a noteworthy, to say the least, accomplishment. And I'm especially uplifted to see the improvement among our lowest performing students. That would be the lowest 10% in our system, as well as our African American students. And you often see a huge achievement gap between our African American students and our white students. That gap was huge in the district, and we're starting to close that gap, and we want to continue to be able to do that because there have been such notable gains from these tests. Wasn't that long ago that the state of public education in the city was pretty bleak, right? And I think people had given up on it. There were people who expected us not to be able to do well and didn't think that this situation could be turned around. We had crumbling school buildings. A lot of our buildings now have been modernized. We've built new schools. For those of you who've been to Cardozo High School, that is a treat. We put $125 million in renovating that school. The architecture is absolutely stunning, and the school itself is now stunning. And of course, our student outcomes have stagnated significantly, but we're now beginning to turn that around. So we're also seeing increased public enrollment. There was a time when the charter enrollment was going up because DCPS was going down. Last year, for the first time since those two approaches have existed, enrollment in charters went up, enrollment in DCPS went up, and enrollment has gone up in both of those sectors once again this year. You know, and not to go out on a limb, but I really think we are turning the corner with public education here in the District of Columbia, and hopefully there will be people who want to come and see how it's done here in the city. I think the results that we've got, they cite the need for us to stay on the path that we're on. We've made a number of revolutionary changes in our system. We know that we continue to work to maintain refinements in our system, but I think, as I tried to say in a speech that I gave back in the summer, this is the time to stay the course. This is the time to look at what we've been able to do well, to continue to support those who are helping to make this progress. Yes, there will be changes because that is the nature of education. But let's not do what unfortunately has been done in the past, and that is every year we have a new approach, starting all over again. Let's stay the course, ladies and gentlemen, because we are seeing now the results of the investments that are being made in our children here in the District of Columbia. Now we're going to hear from our state superintendent, who will give you the results. We're going to hear from Chancellor Henderson. We're going to hear from Director Pearson. But before I ask them to come up, please join me in welcoming a man who I think is a true champion of education, who truly cares about kids. You only have to be around him for a couple of minutes to appreciate his passion for education. Our Secretary of Education, who I guess could have been anywhere in the nation today, since these scores are being released everywhere, but he is right here at what we'll now call his home, and that is right here in the District of Columbia, Secretary Arne Duncan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And I want to be brief in my overview of the national results. You can hear more from these leaders here about the hard work going on right here in D.C. These leaders today, along with D.C.'s teachers and principals, are the real heroes in this story. Overall, the 2013 NAEP report card provides encouraging but modest signs of progress in reading and math for our United States students. I'm pleased to report that in 2013, reading and math scores edged up nationally to new highs, all-time highs, for 4th and 8th graders. And seeing some improvements during these very, very tough economic times when so many states and local communities unfortunately had to cut their funding for education is encouraging. It's particularly heartening that reading scores for 8th graders are up after remaining relatively flat over the past decade. Achievement among the largest minority group in our nation's schools, Hispanic students, is up since 2011. And higher achieving students as a whole are making more progress in both reading and math than in recent years. But while students in each racial group identified in the NAEP showed improvement in some areas, it is frankly troubling that achievement gaps between white and black students and white and Hispanic students across the country failed to narrow from 2011 to 2013. And even with the modest increases in both math and reading performance on the 2013 NAEP, U.S. students are still well behind their peers in our top-performing nations across the globe. And if you look at states individually, we continue to see a lot of variation, tremendous variation in student performance across our nation's states. Leadership and courage at the state and local level matters tremendously. But all states, including D.C., that implemented the state-crafted and state-adopted higher common core standards at the time of the 2013 NAEP assessment showed improvement in at least one area from 2009 to 2013, and none had a decline in scores. Especially given the rapid pace of change and the demands we're placing on America's teachers today, the fact that we're seeing the strongest performance in the history of NAEP is a tremendous testament to the hard work, to the commitment, and the leadership of our nation's teachers and principals. We're asking more of our teachers than ever before, and they continue to step up and meet that challenge in remarkable ways. And for that reason, I'm incredibly optimistic and encouraged about the road ahead for us as a nation. I want to shift gears now to D.C., and it is a pretty remarkable story. When you think about all 50 states taking this test, plus D.C., so 51 players, only one could show the greatest improvement, 1 out of 51, and that was D.C. Give yourselves another round of applause. I want to thank the mayor for his tremendous courage and leadership. I want to thank Chancellor Henderson for her remarkable vision. And it's so funny to me to think back. I remember when they came in, so many of what I call the Chicken Little pundits talked about how reform was dead, how things would stop moving, how things looked so dire in D.C. And in fact, the exact opposite has happened. And D.C. is literally helping lead the country where we need to go. And for me to say that, that would have been unimaginable to say probably 5 or 10 years ago. But on hard, irrefutable proof, D.C. is improving faster than anyone else. D.C. still has a long way to go. Everyone here would acknowledge it. Still a lot of hard work ahead of us. But to see that kind of progress in such a short time is a remarkable testament to the collective leadership of folks on this stage, to, very importantly, our students themselves for all of their hard work, and again, to parents, to teachers and principals and school leaders across this city. People always ask you, well, how do they do it? What's the simple answer? And you'll hear from folks who know the work much more intimately than me. But I'll just say simply is that where we saw significant improvement, whether it's here in D.C., whether it's the state of Tennessee, whether it's Hawaii, which also surprised some folks, what I'm seeing is folks who are willing to challenge the status quo in some pretty significant ways. They aren't doing the easy things. They're doing the hard things. And that takes real courage. There's pushback. There's controversy. It's complex, difficult work. But when you have the courage to do the right things, we're seeing tremendous dividends. The mayor talked about the extraordinary commitment to high-quality early childhood education. And many of these students sitting here who took this test in 4th grade were the beneficiaries of that. And they're reaping the dividends. And the President and I are pushing very, very hard for bipartisan legislation to take across the country the kind of universal access to high-quality pre-K for those students who want that. I keep saying we have to stop playing catch-up. We have to level the playing field before our babies enter kindergarten. And again, in a very concrete way, D.C. is setting the example that we want to replicate across the country. D.C. has unabashedly pursued higher standards. When you're struggling, when your performance is low, there can be some temptations to dummy down standards, to lower the bar, to make yourselves look good. But D.C. has consistently shown courage, done the right thing to raise the bar and say the goal is not to make politicians look good. The goal is to have every single young person graduate from high school, college, and career ready. D.C. is working very, very hard to do that. And then finally, in education, just like in business, in nonprofits, in government, in sports teams, talent matters tremendously. And so often we want to, too often I think we, what I would call demean the teaching profession by treating everybody as if they're the same. And what DC has done is hard, difficult, tough work of trying to better identify great talent and then support those teachers trying to get better. And for those where it's simply not working, after mentoring and help, having those difficult conversations as well. But the most important thing we can do is put a great teacher into every single classroom here in D.C. and across the country, and put a great principal into every single building. And if we're unwilling to do that, we'll continue to have mediocre results. And D.C. hasn't done it perfectly, but what they've done is they've worked with great humility. And every year they're making adjustments and changes and getting better. But for me, the leadership that's extraordinary is they are in this game, and in a very thoughtful and nuanced way are thinking about how they identify that great talent and learn from them and replicate their successes and help others. And so those elements are commitment to access to high-quality early childhood education, raising the bar in terms of standards, thinking very, very deeply and profoundly about the importance of great talent in every single classroom, every single school. Those are some of the elements that DC is, again, I think, helping to create a national model for the country. So I want to congratulate everyone here on the hard work. To have the greatest improvement out of 50 states is a remarkable, remarkable achievement. And again, giving all the naysayers, giving all the doubters, giving everyone who said it couldn't be done or wouldn't be done or that progress would stop, this is irrefutable proof, irrefutable evidence that quite to the contrary, if anything, the pace of change, the pace of improvement is not slowing down, it's speeding up, it's accelerating here in D.C. I commend all of you here on that remarkable accomplishment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. And again, thank you so much for coming today. And I know that your words mean a lot to the people who are here today and all those who are across the city who will hear, you know, what your thoughts are about the progress that is being achieved here in our city. You know, the next gentleman, he's our acting state superintendent, but he is hardly new to education. He actually spent some time directing the Department of Parks and Recreation, but he really is an educator at heart and by training. Did a great job at DPR. We now are nationally accredited. We just got our national accreditation about 4 weeks ago. We're one of, I don't know, there's 120 out of 3,000, I think, in the nation that, where are you, Jesus? Okay. 120 out of 3,000 that are accredited. And he helped lead the effort to get that accomplished, and now he's taken over as the acting superintendent of the Office of the State Superintendent for Education. Not acting because he will be going somewhere else, acting because that's the title he has to have until he goes for confirmation before the council. So he's going to tell us about the scores. Please welcome our acting superintendent for the State Education Agency in the District of Columbia, Jesús Aguirre.
Good morning. Buenos dias. It's kind of a mouthful, huh, Mr. Mayor? The acting state superintendent for the Office of State Superintendent of Education. I can't say that quickly several times, but I'm excited to be here today. As both the mayor and secretary have said, this is truly an announcement that's cause for celebration here in Washington, D.C. I'd like to congratulate the mayor for his leadership in driving our comprehensive education reform effort. Through his leadership, we're building a true, and not just pre-K to 24, but actually we're going all the way down to birth and trying to figure out how to support our little ones. And really it's showing results. I also want to thank Secretary Duncan for joining us here this morning and for continuing to highlight the great work that our students here and educators in DC are doing. So I get to tell you a bunch of numbers, so I apologize to the fifth graders, but listen, you might hear this in math lesson later today. I think your teachers are going to ask you about this, okay? So during the 2012-13 school year, over 4,200 district students in fourth grade and 3,600 students in eighth grade took either the math or the science test on NAEP. Reading test on NAEP. So these results are actually statewide and represent aggregated scores for both our DC public schools as well as our public charter schools. One key outcome, as the mayor mentioned and the secretary mentioned, of the results for DC on NAEP is that DC leads the nation in overall growth in both math and reading and in 4th and in 8th grade. So it's a very encouraging and exciting result, and I think it's cause for one more round of applause. So, as also has been said here, we have a lot of work to do, and historically, DC's performance on the NAEP has lagged behind the rest of the country. However, the results that were released today show that DC is growing faster than the rest of the nation and closing this historical gap. Our growth on NAEP over the last decade has reduced this gap significantly in both subjects, both in 4th and 8th grade. So over the last 10 years, for example, in 4th grade reading, we've reduced the gap by 46%. We've moved from 28 points, scale score points below the national average to 15 in 2013. In 8th grade reading, we've reduced the gap by 18%. In 4th grade math, we've reduced, our reduction is even more dramatic, and we've gone from the historical gap that is now 58% less than it used to be. In 8th grade math, the gap was reduced by 42%. So these results are all incredibly exceptional, and as the mayor indicated, really validate the efforts of our students, their families, our teachers, and the administrators have taken over the last few years. In fact, DC's NAEP performance improved more from 2011 to 13 than in any other two-year period, and in both subjects and both grades tested, with an average of 5 to 7 points, demonstrating that this hard work is paying off. Of course, our educators must remain focused on ensuring that all of our students are benefiting from our hard work. That's why as we look at these results more closely, we're especially encouraged by the performance of our subgroups, and we're happy to report that the growth seen in reading and math was notable in all of our subgroups with the exception of one, and I'll talk about in a second. Our white student population, or our subgroups, saw an increase of 13 scale score points from 11 to 12. Our Hispanic subgroups, as the secretary mentioned nationally, but also in DC, saw an increase of 20 scaled score points from 2011 to 2013. Our African American subgroup saw an increase of 19 scaled score points. And our DC students with special needs actually saw the largest increase of any other subgroup with an increase of 34 scaled score points, which is exciting. Our students who are eligible for free reduced meals through the National School Lunch Program saw statistically significant. You guys can help me with that? Statistically significant? All right, I won't ask you to. Statistically significant gains across all NAEP grades by 5 scaled score points. And our lowest performing students, those students that are in the lowest 10th percentile, had more growth than any other reported percentile. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we still have work to do. And unfortunately, the overall 3-point growth that we saw for our English language learners was not statistically significant and highlights the work we need to continue to do. Another really important aspect of these results is how closely this progress tracks with our own local DC Comprehensive Assessment Test, the DC CAS. For example, the lag that we saw in the performance for our English language learners on NAEP is also something that we identified in the DC CAS. In fact, as we look at each grade and every subject tested on NAEP, we see that the growth seen on DC CAS for each of these grades is consistent with the growth we now continue to see on NAEP. So these results highlight what we're doing right as a state. Mr. Mayor, we'll call you Governor Gray. They really highlight what we're doing well as a state and where we also need to continue to improve, especially given how critical math and reading and how representative they are for proficiency and student success. So again, I want to congratulate everyone here, the students, their families, all of the adults that work with you day in, day out, the volunteers, the principals, the teachers, and all of the administration. This is really a testament to all of your hard work. Thank you.
You know, I think we have an absolutely extraordinary education team here in the city. You just heard from the state superintendent. We have an outstanding deputy mayor for education who I was absolutely ecstatic when she agreed a few months ago to come and work with us. She was first on my list, second on my list, and third on my list of people who I wanted to do that, and that, of course, is Abigail Smith. We have worked to fashion a real partnership with our charter partners, and Scott Pearson is here with us today to talk about the progress from the perspective of the charters, and he will follow our next speaker, someone who she was the first person I appointed when I wasn't even sworn in at that stage. And she agreed to take on the role of being the Chancellor of the DC Public Schools. And on November 1st, she celebrated her 3rd anniversary in this job. And you're not going to find too many superintendents of schools who've actually been in a job 3 years. And from my perspective, I hope she's in the job for the next 33 years, because I think that's the kind of quality that she has brought to our city. Okay, maybe 25, okay? Anyway, please welcome our Chancellor, Henderson.
Good morning. Is it still a morning? Good afternoon. Who cares? Good day in D.C., right? I am super excited to be here today to celebrate what I think is fantastic news. 2 years ago, on my anniversary, my one-year anniversary as Chancellor, I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. And the op-ed effectively said, what you won't see is screaming and fighting. You won't see a whole lot of politicking. What you will see is a revolution in the classroom. Not headline grabbing, very hard, very complex, not sexy, not tweetable, but where the real work actually happens. And we have been working our tails off to ensure that the revolution is in the classroom. And these NAEP results show me that the reforms that we are putting in place are working, that they are delivering the results for students that we want. Now, the real heroes in this story are our teachers and our students. What we've been able to show is that when you raise the bar high for teachers and students, they will rise to the occasion. And I'm super proud that folks who lots of people didn't think could pull it out have actually shown this country that while we have a very long way to go, we're not where we need to be, we are starting the race faster and stronger than most other states. Than all other states. Amen. I want to also say that none of us could do this work without tremendous support. And my hat goes off to the Secretary of Education, who called me when I was on vacation in South Carolina a couple of years ago and said, you have to take this job. And I said, oh, no, I'm on vacation. But I am glad that I did. It has been the most fulfilling professional experience of my life. I'm not staying for 25 years, boss man, but I kind of like it. I also want to thank the mayor, who has been a tremendous champion, who literally asks what we need and then helps us get what we need, and that's why we've gotten the results that we need, that we've achieved. I want to thank the council and the education committee for the support that they've provided for us, and I want to thank our charter partners. People want us to fuss and fight, but I think what we're beginning to show is that when we work together, all boats rise. This is a day for everybody in the city to be happy. And usually I say we are DCPS and we can do this. Today I'm going to say we are DC and we are doing this.
And we are one city. And being one city means that we are embracing as effectively as we can our charter movement, because those are our children in the District of Columbia. It doesn't matter where they go to school. What matters is whether we, in fact, are improving outcomes for our children. So I'm glad that Scott is very much a part of our education team at this stage. We recognize that the charters are independent. They are autonomous. We respect that. But also, we all will get better when we benefit, from hear what others are doing and benefit from that. So please welcome the Executive Director of the Public Charter School Board, Scott Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor Gray, and thank you for your outstanding leadership in education reform. DC is one of the reasons I think that we are seeing these results is because we enacted mayoral control, and so we've had a lot of consistency in education reform. But of course, mayoral control only works when you have a strong mayor who's committed to reform, and that's what we have here in the district. And Secretary Duncan, thank you for coming to Ward 8 in Washington, D.C. today. So as we've heard, this is a great day for public education in D.C. Our schools are getting better. Charter schools, DCPS schools across the city. higher for low-income students, higher for students with disability, higher for African Americans, higher for white students, higher for Latinos. With greater and greater frequency, our city has schools like Achievement Prep, which is co-located here, and who actually have closed the achievement gap with our affluent schools. They are proving that great public schools can be found in every ward of our city. After a nearly 50-year slide, public enrollment in the district has turned around. Since 2011, enrollment in charter schools and DCPS has climbed by 10,000 students and contributed to the growth and revitalization of the District of Columbia. These changes have taken place in the most open, dynamic school choice environment in the nation. We have 60 charter schools operating 109 campuses, now serving 44% of DC students. That is a lot of choice for parents. And to those who say that school choice isn't a powerful lever for school improvement, I say, come to DC. And to those who say that charters and traditional public schools can't work together for the benefit of all families, I say, come to DC. And check out My School DC. This is the common enrollment system and the common lottery that we're developing and that we're going to roll out this year. See the collaboration happening between our schools and see just how much better we will get in the years to come. Thank you very much.
I want to thank everybody for coming today and be a part of what I think is truly a celebratory moment, especially for our children. And while they have been cited earlier as such an important part, I really want to underscore the men and the women who are in our classrooms. Those are the mothers and the fathers and the uncles and the aunts, of the children who they work with every day. That is really hard work. I know it from a personal perspective because my wife was a teacher. She was a teacher in the DC public schools, and for those who think teaching is not difficult, I know firsthand how difficult it is because she worked hard in the classroom and she worked hard at home. She would bring work home and kids home every day because that's a part of being a teacher. So I want to thank all of our teachers, all of those in our classrooms, all of those who are providing support in our classrooms, and of course our principals as well, who have to run the community that is a school. So those are the folks who should certainly feel tremendously heartened about the results of today and feel tremendously satisfied about the contribution that they have made to this effort. Now let's celebrate for a moment and continue the work because we have a long road to travel, but at least we're traveling it in the right direction. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, and young people, for being with us today.